Long before the clash of bronze shields, before the cries of heroes echoed across the plains of Troy, before the name of Achilles was whispered with awe and fear, there existed a quieter world shaped by gods, destiny, and human longing. In this ancient age, the Aegean Sea shimmered beneath a softer sun, carrying merchant ships, myths, and memories between scattered kingdoms. Stone palaces rose above fertile plains, olive groves bent gently in the wind, and people lived their lives under the constant, unseen presence of the Olympian gods. This is the world in which the Trojan War was born, not in violence, but in prophecy, pride, and the delicate balance between moral choice and divine will. As you listen, allow the rhythm of this ancient world to slow your breathing, to guide your thoughts gently backward in time, to an era where history and myth flowed together like a single, endless dream. At the heart of this story lies the city of Troy, also known as Ilion, standing tall near the narrow waters of the Hellespont. Troy was no ordinary city. Its walls were said to be built by the gods themselves, by Apollo and Poseidon, massive stone fortifications that gleamed in the sunlight and promised safety to those within. From its towers, one could see ships passing between the Aegean and the Black Sea, making Troy wealthy, powerful, and strategically vital. Kings traveled far to negotiate with its rulers, traders filled its markets with foreign goods, and poets sang of its beauty. Yet even as Troy prospered, fate quietly gathered its threads, preparing a tragedy that would consume both the city and the heroes who dared to fight beneath its walls. The origins of the Trojan War stretch back to a time before Helen, before Paris, before the famous wooden horse. They begin instead with the gods themselves, whose rivalries and desires often spilled into the mortal world with lasting consequences. According to ancient tradition, it was Zeus, king of the gods, who first set the stage for the war, not out of malice, but necessity. The earth, burdened by the growing number of humans, groaned under their weight. Endless generations had filled the land with conflict, noise, and ambition. To ease this burden, Zeus conceived a great war that would reduce the number of mortals and restore balance to the world. Thus, even before a single spear was lifted, the Trojan War existed as an idea in the mind of a god. One of the earliest signs of this divine plan appeared at a wedding, a moment meant for joy and harmony. The wedding of Peleus, a mortal king, and Thetis, a sea nymph, brought together gods and goddesses from Olympus. Yet one figure was deliberately excluded, Eris, the goddess of discord. Offended and resentful, Eris arrived uninvited and cast among the guests a golden apple inscribed with the words, "To the fairest." Immediately, Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite claimed the prize, their rivalry igniting like a quiet flame that would soon become an inferno. Unable or unwilling to choose between them, Zeus appointed a mortal judge, Paris, prince of Troy, unaware that his decision would echo through history. Paris, raised as a shepherd on the slopes of Mount Ida, lived far from the splendor and politics of Troy. Unknown to him, he was the son of King Priam and Queen Hecuba. A prophecy had foretold that this child would one day bring ruin to Troy, and so he had been abandoned at birth. Yet fate, as it so often does, preserved him. When the goddesses appeared before Paris and offered him gifts in exchange for his judgment, each appealed to his desires. Hera promised power and kingship, Athena offered wisdom and victory in war, but Aphrodite promised the love of the most beautiful woman in the world. Paris chose Aphrodite, and with that single choice, the path toward war became unavoidable. The woman promised to Paris was Helen of Sparta, daughter of Zeus and Leda, renowned throughout the Greek world for her unmatched beauty. Helen's beauty was said to be so extraordinary that it inspired awe, envy, and longing in all who beheld her. Kings and princes traveled from distant lands to seek her hand in marriage, each bringing rich gifts and bold promises. Her stepfather, King Tyndareus of Sparta, feared that choosing one suitor would anger the others and plunge Greece into civil war. Guided by the clever counsel of Odysseus, Tyndareus devised an oath: all suitors would swear to defend the chosen husband and uphold the sanctity of the marriage. Helen was given to Menelaus, and the oath was sealed, quietly binding the future armies of Greece together. When Paris arrived in Sparta as a guest, he was welcomed with the sacred laws of hospitality, known as xenia. Menelaus offered him shelter, feasts, and friendship, unaware of the dangers seated at his table. Aphrodite's promise soon unfolded. Whether through divine enchantment, personal choice, or a blend of both, Helen left Sparta with Paris, carrying treasures from Menelaus' palace across the sea to Troy. This act was more than a personal betrayal, it was a violation of honor, trust, and sacred law. When Menelaus returned and discovered what had happened, grief turned swiftly to fury. The oath of the suitors was invoked, and messengers were sent across Greece, calling kings and warriors to war. As the Greek world began to stir, destiny gathered its greatest heroes. Agamemnon, king of Mycenae and brother of Menelaus, took command of the coalition. From rocky Ithaca came Odysseus, known for his cunning mind. From Pylos arrived wise old Nestor, whose memories stretched back generations. Ajax, Diomedes, and countless other warriors answered the call. Even Achilles, the greatest fighter of them all, was drawn into the conflict, despite knowing that the war would bring him glory at the cost of his life. One by one, ships assembled at Aulis, their sails waiting for the winds of fate to carry them eastward. Meanwhile, within Troy's mighty walls, warnings went unheeded. The priestess Cassandra, cursed to see the future but never be believed, foresaw destruction and bloodshed. King Priam, noble yet weary, hoped diplomacy might still avert disaster. Hector, Troy's greatest defender, prepared himself for a war he did not seek but could not avoid. Life continued in the city, children played, markets bustled, prayers rose to the gods, yet an invisible shadow lengthened with each passing day. The war had not yet begun, but its presence was already felt in the air, in uneasy dreams, and in the silence between words. As night falls on this first chapter of the Trojan War, the world stands balanced on the edge of legend. The ships are gathering, the gods are watching, and human lives are moving steadily toward paths they cannot escape. Let your mind rest in this moment before the storm, where the sea is calm, the stars hang quietly above ancient lands, and fate prepares to awaken. In the next part of this journey, the war itself will begin, and the names of heroes and cities will be written forever into the memory of the world. As dawn slowly rises over the ancient Aegean world, the quiet balance that once held gods and mortals apart begins to dissolve. In Sparta, grief hardens into resolve, and in Mycenae, ambition wraps itself in the language of duty. The abduction of Helen is no longer a private sorrow but a wound to honor shared by all who swore the sacred oath. Across rocky peninsulas, fertile valleys, and island kingdoms, messengers travel on foot and by ship, carrying words that stir sleeping ambitions. One by one, kings remember their promises, and the memory of an oath spoken years earlier now demands blood. In this gentle moment before the storm fully breaks, allow your breathing to slow, as the ancient world begins its long, inevitable march toward war. At the heart of the Greek response stands Agamemnon, king of Mycenae, ruler of a city rich in gold and power. Though the war is fought in the name of Menelaus, it is Agamemnon who commands the assembled forces. His authority is not absolute, but it is heavy with expectation. He is a man shaped by pride, by the belief that kings are chosen by destiny to lead others into suffering for a greater cause. Under his command, the Greek coalition grows into a force unlike any the Aegean has ever seen. Ships are built and repaired, bronze weapons polished, and warriors say farewell to homes they may never see again. The sea itself seems to wait, dark and patient, as though aware that it will soon carry both hope and death upon its surface. Among the gathered heroes, one name moves like a whisper through the camps: Achilles. Son of the sea nymph Thetis and the mortal Peleus, Achilles is young, radiant, and terrifying in his potential. From childhood, he has known his fate, that he may live a long, quiet life without glory, or die young and be remembered forever. As the ships gather at Aulis, Achilles stands already halfway between legend and mortality. His presence fills the air with tension, for all know that where Achilles walks, victory often follows, and death is never far behind. Yet even he cannot escape the web of fate that binds gods and men alike. Not all heroes answer the call willingly. Odysseus, king of Ithaca, clever and cautious, attempts to avoid the war, feigning madness by plowing his fields with salt. But deception cannot hide from destiny. When his infant son is placed before the plow, Odysseus swerves aside, revealing his sanity and sealing his fate. He joins the expedition not with joy, but with a quiet understanding that war will test his mind more than his strength. His path will be long and winding, shaped by choices that echo far beyond the walls of Troy. As the fleet assembles at Aulis, an unnatural stillness settles over the harbor. The sails hang limp, unmoved by wind. Days pass, then weeks, and frustration spreads among the warriors. The seer Calchas reveals the cause. Artemis, goddess of the hunt, has been offended by Agamemnon, and she demands a terrible price. To appease her and release the winds, Agamemnon must sacrifice his own daughter, Iphigenia. The decision is heavy beyond measure. In silence and sorrow, the offering is made, and the winds finally rise. The ships depart, cutting through the waves as though carried by grief itself. War has claimed its first innocent victim before a single spear has struck Troy's soil. Across the sea, Troy prepares. The city's towers watch the horizon, and its people listen for rumors carried by merchants and fishermen. King Priam gathers his council, weighing pride against survival. Hector, eldest son and greatest warrior of Troy, stands as the city's shield. He is not driven by hunger for glory but by duty, to his family, his people, and the land that raised him. His armor bears the marks of countless drills, and his mind carries the weight of knowing that some wars cannot be won, only endured. Beside him stands Aeneas, cousin to Hector, a man favored by the gods, destined to survive what others will not. When the Greek fleet finally appears on the horizon, it is like a forest of masts rising from the sea. The Trojans watch in stunned silence as thousands of ships approach their shores. The landing is fierce and chaotic, waves stained with blood as warriors leap into shallow water under a hail of spears. Protesilaus is the first Greek to set foot on Trojan soil, and the first to die, fulfilling a grim prophecy. The beach becomes a battleground, sand churned into mud by boots and bodies. Yet the Greeks press forward, driven by momentum and the belief that Troy must fall. The early days of the war are marked not by decisive victories but by grinding stalemate. The Greeks raid surrounding towns allied with Troy, gathering supplies and captives. The Trojans retreat behind their mighty walls, refusing to give battle in the open plains. Skirmishes flare and fade like distant thunder, while both sides test each other's strength. The gods, watching from Olympus, choose favorites and interfere in subtle ways, guiding arrows, clouding minds, turning the tide of chance encounters. To the mortals below, these moments feel like luck or misfortune, unaware that divine hands shape every outcome. Within the Greek camp, tensions rise. Agamemnon's authority is challenged, his pride questioned. Achilles, though unmatched in battle, feels the sting of disrespect when Agamemnon takes Briseis, a captive woman claimed by Achilles. This insult cuts deeper than any blade. In rage and wounded honor, Achilles withdraws from the fighting, swearing that the Greeks will learn the cost of dishonoring him. His absence creates a void on the battlefield, one that even the bravest warriors cannot easily fill. The war shifts subtly, as if the land itself senses that its greatest force has been removed. As the conflict drags on, nights grow heavy with reflection. Fires burn low in both camps, casting long shadows that flicker like memories. Warriors think of homes left behind, of promises made and broken. In Troy, Hector returns each evening to the city, embracing his wife Andromache and holding his infant son, Astyanax. Their moments together are tender and fleeting, touched by the unspoken knowledge that fate rarely spares the noble. These quiet scenes, far from clashing swords, carry the true weight of the war, human lives stretched thin beneath the pressure of destiny. By the time the first true year of fighting draws to a close, it is clear that this war will not be swift. The Greeks cannot breach Troy's walls, and the Trojans cannot drive the invaders back into the sea. The plain between city and shore becomes a scarred landscape of dust and broken earth, a place where legends are slowly forged through repetition and loss. Above it all, the gods continue their silent debates, nudging events toward an end only they can fully see. As you rest within this chapter of the story, let the rhythm of the ancient world carry you gently forward. Hear the distant surf against the shore, the low murmur of voices around dying fires, the slow creak of ships at anchor. The war has awakened, but its greatest moments still lie ahead. In the next part, heroes will rise and fall, friendships will be tested by death, and the name of Troy will echo across time, carried on the breath of history itself. As the long war enters its final, fateful phase, the land around Troy feels heavy with memory. Nearly a decade has passed since the first Greek ships darkened the horizon, and the once open plain between the sea and the city has been worn smooth by marching feet, spilled blood, and time itself. Seasons have come and gone, marked not by harvests but by funerals. The warriors on both sides are older now, shaped by loss and endurance. Even the gods, watching from Olympus, seem quieter, as though aware that the end they set in motion draws near. In this hushed moment, before the final storm breaks, allow your thoughts to slow and drift, as the story turns toward its most human and most tragic chapters. With Achilles withdrawn from battle, the balance of the war tilts. The Trojans, led by Hector, press their advantage, driving the Greeks back toward their ships. Fires burn along the shoreline, and panic spreads through the Greek camp. It is in this desperate hour that Patroclus, companion and beloved friend of Achilles, makes a fateful choice. Unable to bear the suffering of the Greeks, Patroclus begs Achilles to let him enter the battle wearing his armor, hoping the sight alone will turn the tide. Reluctantly, Achilles agrees, warning him not to pursue glory beyond what is needed. Patroclus enters the field like a living echo of Achilles himself, and for a time, the Trojans fall back, believing the great warrior has returned, but fate does not bend so easily. Emboldened by success, Patroclus presses forward to the very walls of Troy, crossing a boundary set by destiny. There, he meets Hector. The encounter is swift and brutal. With the aid of Apollo, who strikes Patroclus from behind and strips him of his strength, Hector delivers the final blow. As Patroclus falls, the illusion of Achilles' return shatters. His death sends a tremor through both armies, a reminder that even borrowed glory cannot protect a mortal from his destined end. When word of Patroclus' death reaches Achilles, grief overwhelms him like a tide. He falls to the ground, his cries echoing across the camp and carried by the wind to the sea. In this moment, Achilles fully accepts his fate. He knows that by returning to battle, he seals his own death, yet life without Patroclus has lost its meaning. Thetis, rising from the depths, mourns with her son and seeks new armor for him from Hephaestus, the divine smith. What Hephaestus forges is not merely armor, but a reflection of the world itself, scenes of peace and war, cities and fields, life in all its fragile beauty, etched into a shield that will soon witness terrible acts. Achilles returns to the battlefield like a force of nature unbound. The Trojans scatter before him, fear spreading faster than fire. Rivers run red as Achilles cuts through the ranks, unstoppable and merciless. Even the river god Scamander rises against him, offended by the corpses choking its waters, but Achilles fights on, driven by grief beyond reason. The gods themselves intervene to pull him back from total destruction, reminding him that even the greatest heroes must obey limits imposed by fate. At last, Hector stands alone outside the Scaean gate of Troy. Inside the city, Priam and Hecuba beg him to retreat, but Hector cannot. He knows that he is Troy's last hope, and that running would condemn his people to despair. When Achilles approaches, Hector's courage falters for a moment, and he runs, circling the city 3 times as though seeking escape from destiny itself. Athena, disguised as his brother, deceives Hector into standing his ground. The duel that follows is brief and decisive. Achilles strikes true, and Hector falls, his life leaving him as the dust settles around his body. In his grief and rage, Achilles commits an act that darkens his glory. He binds Hector's body to his chariot and drags it around the walls of Troy, day after day. The Trojans watch in horror, their mourning denied even the dignity of burial. Yet even Achilles cannot escape the quiet pull of humanity. One night, guided by the gods, King Priam enters the Greek camp alone. He kneels before Achilles, kissing the hands that killed his son, and asks for Hector's body. In this moment, enemy and enemy meet not as warriors, but as fathers and sons bound by shared sorrow. Achilles weeps with Priam, and at last returns Hector's body, granting Troy a brief, sacred pause for mourning. After Hector's funeral, Troy stands weakened and exposed. One by one, its allies fall away, and its defenders grow fewer. The Greeks, weary of endless bloodshed, turn to cunning where strength has failed. Under the guidance of Odysseus, they build a massive wooden horse, hollow within, and leave it upon the plain as a false offering to Athena. The rest of the army withdraws to the island of Tenedos, vanishing from sight. When the Trojans find the horse, confusion and debate spread through the city. The priest Laocoon warns them, famously declaring that he fears Greeks even when they bear gifts, but his words are drowned out by hope and curiosity. Cassandra, once again, foresees disaster and cries out in warning, but no one listens. When serpents rise from the sea and crush Laocoon and his sons, the Trojans interpret it as a sign of divine approval. The horse is dragged inside the city walls, and celebrations fill the streets. That night, as Troy sleeps, the hidden warriors emerge. Gates are opened, signals are given, and the Greek army returns under cover of darkness. What follows is swift and merciless. Flames consume palaces, screams echo through narrow streets, and the ancient city falls not with a single blow, but with countless small acts of violence and loss. King Priam is slain at his own altar. Andromache and Hecuba are taken captive. Astyanax, Hector's young son, is thrown from the walls to prevent future vengeance. Aeneas, guided by divine command, escapes the burning city carrying his father on his back and leading his son by the hand, preserving a fragment of Troy's future beyond its destruction. By dawn, the city that once stood proud above the plain is reduced to smoke, ash, and memory. As the Greeks depart at last, their victory feels hollow. Many will never return home, and those who do will carry the war within them for the rest of their lives. The Age of Heroes draws to a close, leaving behind stories shaped by bravery, pride, love, and loss. Troy lives on not in stone, but in song, in the quiet retelling of its rise and fall, passed from voice to voice across centuries. Now, as this ancient tale settles into silence, allow your mind to rest. Imagine the ruins beneath a calm night sky, the sea gently washing the shore where ships once burned, the wind moving softly through broken walls. The war is over. The heroes sleep. And history, having spoken, fades gently into dream.